Hare Krishna devotees, please accept my humble obeisances. All goes to Srila Prabhupada. Welcome devotees to our Bhagavad Gita circle. Today we'll be continuing with Bhagavad Gita chapter 1 verse 36 by His Grace Balabhadra Bhattacharya Prabhu from ISKCON Atlanta. Prabhu, it's all yours. Hare Krishna, please accept my humble obeisances. All goes to Srila Prabhupada.
Haribo, I just accept my obeisances. All glories to Prabhupada.
Yeah.
Just adjusting my volume a little bit. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestai Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Tinamane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nivishesha Shunyavadi Paschata Deshtarne Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Go Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So reading Bhagavad Gita chapter 1 text 36. Papam evashrayedasman hatvaitan atatayinaha tasman narha vayam hantum dartarastran sabandhavan swajanam hi katam hatva sukina shaima madhava. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Sin will overcome us if we slay such aggressors. Therefore, it is not proper for us to kill the sons of Dhritarashtra and our friends. What should we gain, O Krishna, husband of the goddess of fortune? And how could we be happy by killing our own kinsmen? Purport. According to Vedic injunctions, there are 6 kinds of aggressors. Number 1, a poison giver. Number 2, one who sets fire to the house. Number 3, one who attacks with deadly weapons. Number 4, one who plunders riches. Number 5, one who occupies another's land. And number 6, one who kidnaps a wife. Such aggressors are at once to be killed, and no sin is incurred by killing such aggressors. Such killing of aggressors is quite befitting any ordinary man. But Arjuna was not an ordinary person. He was saintly by character, and therefore he wanted to deal with them in saintliness. This kind of saintliness, however, is not for a Kshatriya. Although a responsible man in the administration of a state is required to be saintly, he should not be cowardly. For example, Lord Ram was so saintly that people even now are anxious to live in the kingdom of Lord Rama Raja. But Lord Ram never showed any cowardice. Ravana was an aggressor against Rama because Ravana kidnapped Rama's wife, Sita, but Lord Rama gave him sufficient lessons, unparalleled in the history of the world. In Arjuna's case, however, one should consider the special type of aggressors, namely his own grandfather, own teacher, friends, sons, grandsons, etc. Because of them, Arjuna thought that he should not take the severe steps necessary against ordinary aggressors. Besides that, saintly persons are advised to forgive. Such injunctions for saintly persons are more important than any political emergency. Arjuna considered that rather than kill his own kinsmen for political reasons, it would be better to forgive them on grounds of religion and saintly behavior. He did not, therefore, consider such killing profitable simply for the matter of temporary bodily happiness. After all, kingdoms and the pleasures derived therefrom are not permanent. So why should he risk his life and eternal salvation by killing his own kinsmen? Arjuna is addressing Krishna as Madhava, or the husband of the goddess of fortune, is also significant in this connection. He wanted to point out to Krishna that as the husband of the goddess of fortune, he should not induce Arjuna to take up a matter which would ultimately bring about misfortune. Krishna, however, never brings misfortune to anyone, to say nothing of his devotees. Text 37 and 38. Yajapi ete na pasyanti lobo pahata chetasa kula shaya kritam dosham mitra drohe cha patakam katamna geyam asmabi paparasma nivartitum kulashaya kritam dosham prapasyad bir Janardana. Oh, Janardana. Although these men, their hearts overtaken by greed, see no fault in killing one's family or quarreling with friends, why should we, who can see the crime in destroying a family, engage in these acts of sin? Purport. A Kshatriya is not supposed to refuse to battle or gamble when he is so invited by some rival party. Under such an obligation, Arjuna could not refuse to fight because he had been challenged by the party of Duryodhana. In this connection, Arjuna considered that the other party might be blind to the effects of such a challenge. Arjuna, however, could see the evil consequences and could not accept the challenge. Obligation is actually binding when the effect is good, but when the effect is otherwise, then no one can be bound. Considering all these pros and cons, Arjuna decided not to fight. Text 39. Kulashaye pranasyanti kula dharma sanatanam dharme naste kulam krishnam adharmo bhavatyuta. With the destruction of the dynasty, the eternal family tradition is vanquished, and thus the rest of the family becomes involved in irreligion. Report. In the system of the Varnashrama institution, there are many principles of religious traditions to help members of the family grow properly and attain spiritual values. The elder members are responsible for such purifying processes in the family, beginning from birth to death. But on the death of the elder members, such family traditions of purification may stop, and the remaining younger family members may develop irreligious habits and thereby lose their chance for spiritual salvation. Therefore, for no purpose should the elder members of the family be slain. Text 40. Adharma bhavat Krishna pradushanti kula striya strishu strishu dustashu varshneya jayate varna sankara. When irreligion is prominent in the family, O Krishna, the women of the family become polluted. And from the degradation of womanhood, O descendant of Vrishni, comes unwanted progeny. Purport. Good population in human society is the basic principle for peace, prosperity, and spiritual progress in life. The Varnashrama religion's principles were so designed that the good population would prevail in society for the general spiritual progress of state and community. Such population depends on the chastity and faithfulness of his womanhood. As children are very prone to be misled, women are similarly very prone to degradation. Therefore, both children and women require protection by the elder members of the family. By being engaged in various religious practices, women will not be misled into adultery. According to Chanakya Pandit, women are generally not very intelligent and therefore not trustworthy. So the different family traditions of religious activities should always engage them. And thus their chastity and devotion will give birth to a good population eligible for participating in the Varnashrama system. On the failure of such Varnashrama dharma, naturally the women become free to act and mix with men, and thus adultery is indulged in at the risk of unwanted population. Irresponsible men also provoke adultery in society, and thus unwanted children flood the human race at the risk of war and pestilence. Text 41. Sankaro narakayaiva kula nagnam kulasya cha patanti pitaro yesham lupta pindo dakakriya. An increase of unwanted population certainly causes hellish life, both for the family and for those who destroy the family tradition. The ancestors of such corrupt families fall down because the performances for offering them food and water are entirely stopped. Purport. According to the rules and regulations of the fruitive activities, there is a need to offer periodical food and water to the forefathers of the family. This offering is performed by worship of Vishnu, because eating the remnants of food offered to Vishnu can deliver one from all kinds of sinful reactions. Sometimes the forefathers may be suffering from various types of sinful reactions, and sometimes some of them cannot even acquire a gross material body and are forced to remain in subtle bodies as ghosts. Thus, when remnants of prasadam food are offered to forefathers by descendants, the forefathers are released from ghostly or other kinds of miserable life. Such help rendered to forefathers is a family tradition, and those who are not in devotional life are required to perform such rituals. One who is engaged in the devotional life is not required to perform such actions. Simply by performing devotional service, one can deliver hundreds and thousands of forefathers from all kinds of misery. It is stated in the Bhagavatam 11:541, Devarshi bhutapta nirnam pritrinam nakinkoro nayam rinicha rajan sarvatmana ya sharanam saranyam gato mukundam parihritya kartham. Anyone who has taken shelter of the lotus feet of Mukunda, the giver of liberation, giving up all kinds of obligation, and has taken to the path in all seriousness, owes neither duties nor obligations to the demigods, sages, general living entities, family members, humankind, or forefathers, end quote. Such obligations are automatically fulfilled by performance of devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Text 42. Dosharitai kula nagnam varna shankara karakai utsajante jati dharma kula dharmas chashasvata. By the evil deeds of those who destroy the family tradition and thus give rise to unwanted children, all kinds of community projects and family welfare activities are devastated. Purport: community projects for the four orders of human society, combined with family welfare activities as they are set forth by the institution of Sanatana Dharma or Varnashrama Dharma, are designed to enable the human being to attain his ultimate salvation. Therefore, the breaking of the Sanatana Dharma tradition by irresponsible leaders of society brings about chaos in that society. And consequently, people forget the aim of life, Vishnu. Such leaders are called blind, and persons who follow such leaders are sure to be led into chaos. Text 43. Utsana kula dharmanam manusyanam janardana narake niyatam baso bhavati yanu sushruma. O Krishna, maintainer of the people, I have heard by disciplic succession that those whose family traditions are destroyed dwell always in hell. Purport: Arjuna bases his argument not on his own personal experience, but on what he has heard from the authorities. That is the way of receiving real knowledge. One cannot reach the real point of factual knowledge without being helped by the right person who is already established in that knowledge. There is a system in the Varnashram institution by which before death, one has to undergo the process of atonement for his sinful activities. One who is always engaged in sinful activities must utilize the process of atonement called prayaschita. Without doing so, one surely will be transferred to hellish planets to undergo miserable lives as a result of sinful activities. Text 44. Aho bata mahat papam kartum vyavasita vayam Yatraja sukha lobena hantum swajanam ujyata. Alas, how strange it is that we are preparing to commit greatly sinful acts, driven by the desire to enjoy royal happiness. We are intent on killing our own kinsmen. Purport: driven by selfish motives, one may be inclined to such sinful acts as the killing of one's own brother, father, or mother. There are many such instances in the history of the world, but Arjuna, being a saintly devotee of the Lord, is always conscious of moral principles and therefore takes care to avoid such activities. Yadi, text 45, Yadimam apratikaram ashastram shastrapanaya dartarastrarane hanyus tanme shema taram bhavet. Better for me if the sons of Dhritarashtra, weapons in hand, were to kill me unarmed and unresisting on the battlefield. Purport: it is the custom, according to Kshatriya fighting principles, that an unarmed and unwilling foe should not be attacked. Arjuna, however, decided that even if attacked by the enemy in such an awkward position, he would not fight. He did not consider how much the other party was bent upon fighting. All these symptoms are due to soft-heartedness resulting from his being a great devotee of the Lord. Text 46. Sanjaya uvacha evam uktarjuna sanke ratopasta upavasat vishrijya sa sharam chapam shoka samvigna manasa. Sanjaya said, Arjuna, having thus spoken on the battlefield, cast aside his bow and arrows and sat down on the chariot, his mind overwhelmed with grief. Purport: while observing the situation of his army, Arjuna stood up on the chariot, but he was so afflicted with lamentation that he sat down again, setting aside his bow and arrows. Such a kind and soft-hearted person in devotional service of the Lord is fit to receive self-knowledge. Thus, in the Bhaktivedanta purports to the first chapter of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita in the matter of observing the armies on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Hare Krishna. So, honestly, I think we can maybe do a little quick review of the chapter.
Prabhu. Please, yes, it's your call.
I'm going to call on dear Krishna Prabhu. Hari Bol. Give us some insight on this chapter that we just read. Some of your just reflections, whatever you're thinking, ideas, something that strikes you about how things are constructed in this first chapter. What's your thoughts on that?
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Please.
Hare Bol Prabhu.
All goes to Srila Prabhupada. All glories to you.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Okay, so you picked on me, so I will try. I think if I would like to, if I have to summarize in short, then chapter 1, like we discussed on the first day, sometimes we think it's one of the unimportant chapter, but if we really carefully read it under the association of senior devotees like you, then we see how, actually in this chapter, we see how the vision of a devotee and a non-devotee is how a devotee thinks and how he feels like Arjuna, and how a non-devotee like Duryodhana, what is his consciousness. So that this chapter gives us a good glimpse about that. And especially in this section, when you were reading, sometimes we feel it is the weakness of the Arjuna that is coming out. But at the same time, we think we see the qualities, actually they are the qualities of a person who is fit to receive the transcendental knowledge, that he should be humble, soft-hearted. And then we will see how Krishna, the other end of the story. But those are my thoughts, Prabhu.
Oh, very nice. Thank you so much. Who else would like to share? This is a wonderful opportunity to churn the ocean of nectar, Bhagavad Gita. Just whatever strikes you from this chapter. Maybe there's like Prabhu just mentioned, the humble nature, Vaishnava nature of Arjuna. Even though he's a Kshatriya, still his true nature can't be cannot be suppressed. It's there. It always comes out. It's just like whether you work in a business, or whether you're raising a family, or whether you're a policeman or a politician. But if you're a devotee, then your qualities will shine through. That's why later on, 3rd chapter says, Yat Yadacharati Shresthat. Whatever a great man does, common men follow. So a devotee will always set the highest standard in any situation. But in this situation, the fact is Arjuna has to fight, but he's not understanding why he has to fight up to this point. He's thinking, all my relatives and this, all these arguments, really good arguments, actually really Vedic-based arguments. But he's arguing with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which means he's not able to see. So one time someone asked Srila Prabhupada, was Arjuna in Mahamaya or Yogamaya when he was refusing to fight? And Prabhupada said Arjuna was in Mahamaya when he was refusing to fight. And when he came to his realization, then he was in Yogamaya. So it's a very tenuous situation that Arjuna is in. So who else would like to share some thoughts? It's a beautiful chapter.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam, Jai Srila Prabhupada.
Hari Bol.
I have like not many points, but couple of them, like we could see like how Arjuna was so much compassion for his family. Even he is such a good Kshatriya, still he's thinking for the family. And even he's thinking, even if he fights and he wins, there is nothing to enjoy as such if he kills his family.
Very, very good point. He's thinking that what avail us, Krishna, if we win an unrivaled kingdom like sovereignty in heaven, if the persons we want to enjoy with are all dead? So that's a major material conception. He's thinking, how will I enjoy the spoils of the battle if everyone's dead? Because in the natural flow of activities, you want to show off your house, you want to show off your car, you want to show off your jewelry, why do we dress up? So we can show off, fix everything, gopi dots and blah, blah, blah. So he's thinking, I have no one left to show it to, so what's the point in fighting? Fighting is to achieve something so you can share it and get the glory from everyone. And he's thinking that'll all be gone, Krishna. Why are you asking me to do this? Why are you asking me to engage in this ghastly warfare? If you know that intelligence is better than fruitive work, why? So big arguments, really good arguments. Thank you so much, Mataji.
Yeah. And even the sinful action by killing his gurus, Bhattacharya and other Bhishma and his great-great-grandfather.
So suppose someone asks you a question, like this morning, I got a question from a devotee who was asked a question by a colleague. He's a doctor, and she happened to be Hindu. So she said, how Ram can send Sita away, even she's pregnant, how can he do that? Because one person complained? How can Ram do that? So he asked me, well, how should I answer that? I said, well, Ram is Supreme Personality of Godhead, but on top of that, he came as a king, and he had to set the highest standard of kingly behavior. So on the complaint of one person, he was willing to send Sita away. Of course, it was Maya Sita, but on the complaint of one person, he was willing to do his duty as king to set the highest standard. Like in our society, Prabhupada says, these leaders now, they will stay on to the fag end of life, never give up their position until they're dead or until someone kills them, assassination. But Ram was willing to give up his own wife to set the highest standard as a leader. So that's one way I looked at it. So that's, if someone asks you the question, Mataji, how can Krishna ask Arjuna to kill these people who, like you just said, guru, brothers, grandfathers, leaving the women without husbands, Varna Sankara? So what would be your answer if someone asked you that question? How can Krishna do such a thing? What do you say? Is that Varsha?
Yeah, Prabhuji. It's all about like dharma, adharma. That is what I will say, because all his Arjuna's brother, fathers, grandfathers, not father, but great-great-grandfather, and all are like, they were doing adharma. And that time relation doesn't matter. Who is doing adharma, they should be killed.
Absolutely. Anastasia, can you take the screen off of the verse so we can see everybody at one time? Because I can't see if any hands are there. make sure we can see everyone. And let me see, gallery. Okay, good. That's a good point. So Anasuya, what do you think? What's your thoughts on this?
What's coming to my mind, Prabhu, as we were going through the first chapter was I was trying to put myself in the situation for someone who is starting a spiritual journey. There's a lot of doubts, bewilderment. Is this right? Is this not right? Who am I doing it for? Who am I not doing it for? So many uncertainties, and then so many justifications, so many this, so many whatever. And because as the last verse, Sri Prabhupada was saying, because Arjuna was kind and soft-hearted, so he was fit to receive the realization. And I think for a spiritual seeker, we go through, people generally go through that journey of trying, what they say, their spiritual quest.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Trying to find it. And there's so many uncertainties. And then at one point they become so soft-hearted and kind. And they say, like Draupadi, please help me. What am I doing? And I think, I know for myself, definitely I did walk that journey, why am I here? What am I doing? And does this make sense? And interestingly, as you were reading, I was remembering few things that I read the Bhagavad Gita like 29 years ago. Of course, nothing made sense to me at that time. Now it's like, oh my God, it's so true. It really reflects the life of a spiritual seeker in the beginning stages of devotional service.
Yeah.
Why am I doing this? Why am I not doing that? Why should I do this? Why should, and that's what's coming to my mind is a lot. And this whole chapter, as I was listening to Arjuna, is because him being a silly devotee of the Lord, as Prabhupada said, at the same time, he had the heart, a soft and kind heart. At the same time, there was so many doubts because he was kind. Whereas Duryodhana, being the bad guy, he didn't have any, at least from what I gathered, he didn't have any doubts. He just wanted to kill the Pandavas and get that throne because his heart wasn't soft and kind. Whereas for Arjuna, it was so kind and soft that he wanted to know, what am I doing?
Right.
And that was what was coming to my mind, is that journey,
Excellent. That's beautiful. There's so many points in the first chapter. Yes, I see the hand. Varsha, that your husband? What's your name, Prabhuji?
Yeah, Prasad.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
He just doesn't give us prasadam. That's what it is. I'm messing with you, Prabhu.
Yeah. Accept my humble obeisances, Prabhuji. Jai Srila Prabhupada. Just one aspect I just wanted to bring here, looking at that one verse, 1.40, right? There are some concept that has been touched by Prabhupada with regards to women.
Yes.
And that somebody who is not in sync with it might consider it in a different way. So how do you want to comment on it so that there are no misunderstanding or misinterpretation?
Yeah, I was waiting for that question because I know that's a controversial thing. Yeah. And we have to know that Srila Prabhupada says here, according to Chanakya Pandit, that's the first point. He didn't say according to me. He said, according to Chanakya Pandit, this is exactly, according to Chanakya Pandit, women are generally not very intelligent and therefore not trustworthy. So you might question, why is Prabhupada introducing something from Chanakya Pandit? Because when he wrote these books, of course, he said Krishna wrote the books through him. He was writing not just for followers of the ISKCON movement, devotees who are practicing chanting 16 rounds. He wrote these books for the entire world. And he included, and this is not just a speculation on my part, he included history, he included culture, Vedic culture and other culture. He included Vaishnava culture. He included everything in the books. So when a point like this comes up, I know it's challenging, just like the point about Black people. comes up in the Bhagavatam in the 5th canto with Prithu Maharaj. And all these things come up. Prabhupada presented in a very accurate historical context. He's not saying what he thinks. Many times people say, well, Srila Prabhupada was prejudiced. That's wrong. Srila Prabhupada was a Vedic scholar as well as a Vaishnava scholar. So he presented these books in a vast overview of the culture. This is what culturally is correct about what Chanakya Pandit said, but it's not what Prabhupada himself felt. Otherwise, how do you explain the way in which he trained the Matajis and worked with the Matajis? He told the Matajis and the boys are working equally hard. And I know for a fact, being quote unquote an older devotee, how the women were mistreated, not by Srila Prabhupada, but by inexperienced leaders who took these kinds of statements and tried to subjugate the women. Prabhupada was furious about this. How the men tried to subjugate the women, saying they were less than them. And they would quote this exact purport that you're pointing out. So I'm very glad you brought this up. So when I defend this or Srila Prabhupada, I put it in that context, that he spoke from a scholarly platform, historically accurate platform, which includes this concept. We can't hide this fact that in the Hindu culture, according to Chanakya Pandit, this is how women were treated. But Prabhupada said, how can you even think that women were like that when you have Queen Kunti and Draupadi, so many great Vaishnavis who were exalted in our culture? So I look at it from the historical as well as the Krishna conscious perspective. From the Krishna conscious perspective, women and men are equal because we're not the material body, we're spirit soul. So how could we speak one thing on one hand and speak something on the other hand? We're saying we're not the body, but we're saying women are less than men. We're not saying women are less than men. Chanakya Pandit said it, and he is not a Vaishnava. So why did Prabhupada quote him? Because he's part of the Vedic culture. He's an accepted authority in the Vedic culture, so Srila Prabhupada presented like that. So I'll finish with one last little quick thing. And when Prabhupada came to Philadelphia in 1975, when he arrived and gave the arrival address, he said, I was just speaking with one reporter, and I told her women have a 32-ounce brain. And she was very angry with me. So the devotee said, what is that? Where did that come from? Srila Prabhupada got that quote from a philosophy professor in his university. It's not his thought. It's not what Prabhupada thought about women. He was quoting a philosophy professor that he heard in college, because Prabhupada brought in all different kinds of references. So you have to have confidence that Srila Prabhupada did not subjugate the women or make them feel less, although he presented many things in his book. So that's one way of approaching it. So hopefully that's helpful, but I know it's probably more confusing than helpful, but it comes as we go.
Thanks. Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhu. So Anasuya?
Did that help, Prabhu?
Yeah, definitely. In fact, I also heard that there was some conversation when this came up during Prabhupada's time, and he reacted saying that it is not applicable to a devotee woman.
Exactly.
Perfect. That was my next point, actually, because I've heard Mother Ramboru, Mother Rukmini, Mother Malati, and I forgot someone else that said that Prabhupada said that it doesn't apply to devotee women who take up devotional service.
Yeah, and just like it doesn't apply to Black people or white people, if you're a devotee, we're not the body, we're spirit soul. That is I have to speak at a conference coming up in June, and it's about race and religion. And I got my weapons ready. Bhagavad Gita chapter 2, text 13, we're not the body. So why are we saying like that? Oh, I'm just so excited. I can't wait to share this information with them.
Would love to see that recording, Prabhu.
Well, they're talking about religion and race. Well, religion should start with Dehi no asminyata dehe. That's the first lesson of Bhagavad Gita. Without that being understood, everything else is just like, it becomes confusing. So yeah. All right. So we'll probably stop here, right?
Thank you so much, Prabhu, for such an enlivening class. Thank you to all the devotees for joining us. Vanchakraptibhyascha, Kripasundabheva, Patitanam Pavanebhyo, Vaishnavebhyo, Namo Namah. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Hare Krishna, everyone.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.